Live from 305 with the Prince of Probate, Al Nicoletti. What's up, Al?
Carlos, thanks so much for having me on your show, man. This is awesome. I can't wait to dive in. And thanks for the name drop too. There's a whole story to that. So
Oh
I'm
man,
happy to be here.
man, I want to hear it. Yeah, it wasn't a couple months ago. We met just sitting together at a mastermind, which was awesome. We'll be hanging out in a month or two, which I'm looking forward to. But you're an interesting guest, and I want to hear everything that you have going on right now, and then we can kind of talk about how you got into the space, how we met at a mastermind, everything like that. Probate is such an interesting topic, and we were talking up, we were catching up a lot on personal and business stuff before we hit record here, but it's interesting how investors are having success really niching down. And Alex Hormozy is a super popular guy in the space right now for sales, and he talks about niche slapping, where you can get really concentrated on niches, like really dialing into a specific niche and getting a lot of results from that. So, Alman, tell the audience just kind of like what you're doing, what you're up to now, and then we can kind of talk about how you got into that, and we'll talk all things probate, man.
Yeah. So right now, what's been happening in my business is I've basically tripled the business over the last 3 years, having been solid and going hard in the probate niche. And I just have a mind of I know how to speak. I know how to get in front of people. I know how to also be the lawyer too at the same time and multitask. And over the last 3 years, it has gotten to this point where now I have conquered it in one location, being Jacksonville. I want to get the message everywhere I can. So right now, 2022, I'm doing my Crushing Florida Probate Tour, which is I'm going to all these different spots all around Florida, Carlos, like everywhere, whether it's Tampa, Orlando, Naples, Sarasota, and just doing a whole thing on explaining that this is an incredible niche. It's just starting. We're really just at the inception of it because of the stats and where the stats are going. I mean, we're not even close to it yet. Like right now, 2022 is kind of at that little lip right before we hit the boom on how much property and baby boomer property is going to be in Florida. So just been really going at it, going touring, speaking, doing amazing podcasts like with you, Carlos. Like this is great because it really gets the message. It really hammers it home. And just trying to grow the business, trying to delegate more too. I mean, there's so many other business things outside of probate that's been challenging, is delegating more, not drafting so much, trying to be on the business, not in the business. So a lot of changes, a lot of cool things happening, marketing wise, video wise, content wise, dropping things, all trying to do more videos and educational things and collaborate with, different graphics and stuff like that. So it's been a wild adventure lately.
Yeah, man, I've seen it. It's been awesome. It's been awesome to see. How did you get into the probate space? I guess even take a step back. What is like your title, or what would you say if you just met somebody? What would you say you do?
So, sometimes it comes out differently because really it's an attorney at the end of the day,
Hmm.
right? Ultimately, it's what I am, among like being now a podcast host and a
Hmm.
content creator, all that. But I would say what usually comes out is probate attorney. But I'm also not even just a probate attorney. I get into a lot of weird and different things like in the real estate world. So I consider myself a real estate attorney, but
Hmm.
I don't focus on a lot of I mean, real estate is so big. I mean, if we had a huge block right here that was all real estate, the kind of the stuff that I get into is like right here. It's not all of this stuff, but it's a lot of little different things that comprise of fixing title issues. So probate attorney, real estate attorney, whatever you want to make it. At the end of the day, the lawyer's here.
Love it, man. Quick side note, because I always love to make sure people can plug into you and check you out while they're listening to this live in real time. I'm going to have all your info in the show notes. But do you work with anybody outside of Florida, or just investors primarily in the Florida area?
Really, only in Florida. That's because
Okay.
that's where I'm at. That's where I'm a lawyer to be. But I do know if anybody does try to look for different attorneys in states that are looking for that probate attorney, I know a few. I don't know them all. If you're looking in Idaho, I don't know there. But if you're looking in South Carolina or Georgia or maybe Arizona, in certain states, maybe Texas, I know a network just enough to work with people there, like the other lawyers like that. But investors wise, I'm in Florida, big time Florida. that's where you're going to find me.
Awesome, man. So I'll make sure that we have the correct contact info so that you guys can connect with Al's team if it makes sense, especially if you're in Florida or a connection out of state that he may be able to help you out with. Let's go ahead and dive into the meat and potatoes, man. I want to hear from your perspective what probate is.
Probate on a basic level in real estate is somebody owned a piece of property. So it could be commercial property, it could be single family home, it could be land, it's real estate, right? And we'll stick to real estate because we can get into bank accounts and all the other extraneous things too, but we'll focus on the real estate world. So for real estate, they own that property, they died, and the property is in their name. That person that owned it, it's in their name. Could be in an LLC that's a single member too, but it's really it's in their name. Now they have heirs, whether it's a spouse that's alive, maybe kids, maybe grandkids. If you go that far, maybe parents, there's a whole line. Maybe they have a will and they picked who they wanted to go to. In order for those people, whoever they are, those heirs, to either get title to the property or sell the property, in Florida, there's a procedure we have to go through court that moves the title over to them, and that is probate. It's the moving and shifting of title from the person that owned that property to the people now that are the true heirs that can either keep it, refinance it, sell it, do what they want with it, and move on. That's basic of what it is, the shifting of title.
Mm-hmm. That's a nice concise way to sum it up. For you, like, why are you such a valuable asset to have in all these different people that we're talking about before we started recording, as far as like people that listen to your show or people that you connect with? Like, why are you such a valuable piece, and why do investors get caught up on this? Obviously, title issues or things that you might not find out.
One of the things that I heard a lot of before I started getting into the niche as much as I did, and also when I started speaking on it for like the first time ever, was how are you able to do probates in 2 to 4 days? How are you able to do a probate in 2 to 4 weeks, a month, 2 months? The first thing I heard, and what was unique about it, was the timing. Was how was I able to all of a sudden, a novel concept of probate being around for years and many years, and all of a sudden I come in, I'm like able to do it like quickly, or just be vocal about it too, but just do it quickly. And when that started to catch fire and it just caught on to a lot of people, that's what a unique thing was, because now investors that used to pass off the deals because probate used to take so long and their buyers would be waiting. I mean, Carlos, that buyers don't want to be waiting 6 months, 12 months for one deal that you're going to, who knows what you're going to do with it, keep it, or they're going to then close it and do something else with it, or Airbnb it. They don't want to wait that long. But that was the first thing I heard of, was that probate, everybody had it in their mind. Investors had it in their mind that it's going to take 12 months. It's going to take 2 years. It's going to take a while. So we beat it on the timing. And then the second part of it, which is a major hook for my business model and what makes me unique, is I'm cool with waiting until the HUD, the closing, for payment. And so what that meant for a lot of investors wasn't just, oh, Al's the attorney that just waits till closing. That's great. That meant zero risk. That meant zero risk for upfront. That also added a level of comfortability of saying, okay, if we're all cool kind of waiting until the end, that means we can kind of work through this deal. We're not putting any, we're not sinking our teeth into the game. We're trying to really figure out what's going on, come up with a solution. And then if it all works out, great. It's a win-win-win, right? Win attorney, win seller, win buyer, or win end buyer. Right. So there was a structure to it that really helped. And I think that just changed a lot of what it did for people. And now I just explain it and I go through all these scenarios. And what I do differently also is, you get a lot of probates, Carlos, that, I mean, if I told you mom died, there was no spouse, no will, one kid ever, and you'd be like, we got to do probate. It sounds really easy. It sounds like we just got to deal with that one kid.
Person. Mm-hmm.
Right. That's it. Exactly. But then if I told you the amount of stories that I get on a daily basis of just there's 2 probates because someone died after the other, and then they had 7 kids or 4 kids, and now you got to round up the rest together, and just the complication, it can sound overwhelming. And that's where I'm here to say it's not necessarily overwhelming if the numbers make sense and we can figure it out. We just got to get all the right people. And so I've seen deals with 4 probates, 2 probates, 6 probates, 5 probates. And a lot of investors at the time would have passed it off. So we help on the simple, but we also help on the complex side of things that get really sticky, because you can imagine the spreads that you can get on deals if you can just get over that family tree of people that all of a sudden now we have to solve.
100%. So real quick, guys, if you're in Florida, work with Al. He's a well-oiled machine as far as speed. And then also, he's not even getting his service fee, what his value he's bringing until the closing. So if you're in Florida, work with Al, reach out. He might have a good probate attorney, but that's kind of step one, is maybe get a good probate attorney on your real estate investing team as you're building out your kind of company structure.
Yeah, no matter what state you're in, right? Because every state's different. Florida's just different with what they have, but every state's different. So you may go to South Carolina and there may be different rules. So you want to connect with somebody over there. Or you may go to California and they have creditor rules. They can't sell the property. Who knows what happens in another state? But it's really important, like Carlos is just saying, is that you want to connect with people and specialists in those states, even the title companies, to find out what it's going to take to close. Because Carlos, that's another thing that I kind of realized I was really good at doing, which was not just being the probate attorney, but how do we get this? What's the vision to closing, right? Because ultimately you want to close, your buyers want to close, whoever wants to close. And so we had to see things all the way from start to finish. And there's probate attorneys, and then there's title insurance. And a lot of the attorneys that I have seen, there's some that get the title world, but there's a disconnect because title insurance gets really picky on what they need. So the value of what I'm able to bring is seeing it from start to finish, and seeing the vision of how we get there. And it can be wild, because there's things that title needs that we haven't even gone through. We haven't even gotten to that point of yet, right? With power of attorneys, or maybe these certified copies or recording. So there's a really wild process with title. So when you connect with people, don't just connect with the probate attorneys in that state you're in, but also with the title companies, and find out what their requirements are, because you want to close. Forget about the probate part. Probate sounds great. How do you close the deal? That's what we're all trying to do.
Great nuggets for sure. I want to take a step to the side really quick, because I think you have, one of the most interesting perspectives for this question that I could ask. But for investors that are like, I would like to market to, probate leads, essentially, where are you seeing in Florida, like a seller that might be in that situation, or like where are you seeing marketing coming from? Is it mainly like Google pay-per-click or direct mail? Is there anything that kind of leads the way as far as investors getting probate leads, like where they're sourcing probate leads from?
It's an interesting question. So I'll start with land. Something I've heard with land is mailers, direct mail. I don't know why. I'm sure cold call and all the other methods work, but I had a phone call with a potential seller about 2 months ago. And when I was talking to him, on land deals, numbers are super tight, right? So when you get those super tight deals, the sellers are going to be like, well, somebody offered 6,000, somebody offered 6,200, somebody offered. So he was like, I've gotten like at least 30 mailers on this one property. And so I heard it, and he's like, mailer. So people are mailing to a lot of the heirs or potential sellers that own that land, I guess, to the out-of-state property, or they find their address through Skip and they do their mailers. I've also heard a lot of people like the texting and stuff like that, and the cold calls. But what seems to be on the rise too is a lot of the PPC and Facebook ads. Just more people are on social media. I think more people are on the internet. And if there's the opportunity to get those solid leads through those mediums that are hot motivated leads, that a lot of people do, that's huge.
Love it, man. Good perspective there. I want to hear some messy or detailed deals that you've broken down to give perspective of kind of like your day to day and what that looks like?
Wow. We could go from simple to absolutely wild, but I think you just want the wild because
Mhm.
the wild is where a lot of investors pass off, right? They
Yeah.
pass it off. They're like, I don't want to deal with this. I'd rather either do something else with it or not even deal with it, right?
And Al,
So
this is the opportunity, and like part of one of the many values that Al is bringing is like these are deals that a lot of investors, like people listening to this, could be leaving behind just because it's such a pain, or it takes the same time to close like a short sale that could be like 12 months.
yeah, I mean they could take a while, and when they're complicated sometimes, or you just don't want to deal with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big ones I had recently, that I just got done, that was, and there's a story to it, which was the 6 probates on one commercial piece of property. And somebody would be listening thinking, wait, really? You can get into probate with commercial property? Again, go back to basics. Somebody owned that property in their name. There was no LLC formation on anybody with multiple members. There was no land trust. There was no Inc. or corporation. It was actually somebody that owned that for many, many years. So investor finds this piece of property, in on the property appraiser, it's only titled in one person's name. And a nugget for your audience, always be careful with property appraisers in Florida, because it may say one person's name, but may not be how title really flows or what's really reflected. So initially the investor thought, oh, we're only dealing with one person. So I checked the property appraiser, checked the deeds, and I don't think there was a deed from until like 1940s or something. It was like super deep. So my red flag goes off, and this is where we start connecting with all the people in our community. And I said, you got to make sure that, great, it's good that you found some potential people that are the sellers, because they thought they had the sellers. I said, great, you do your contracting, you get under contract, but you got to bring this contract to title, because title needs to find out if this one person owned that property. And I didn't think so. So title comes back. And if you've never seen a title commitment, ask your title company to see one, because title commitments really can help you absorb what it takes to close, right? So on the commitment, Carlos, instead of one, it said 8 people. And so I was like, okay, let's hope everybody's alive. That's my world, right? Like, you'll hear me, I'm like, is everybody alive? Like, that's like a normal thing now. And we found out 2 were alive and 6 were dead. So I thought, okay, like, how bad could this be? Well, on a side note, I ended up talking to one of the heirs' husbands at one point, and he was explaining to me, he was like, Al, you don't understand. This property has been in the family of all those people for at least 50 to 70 years. And he said, we've tried to sell this property and get it through probate 3 to 4 times. He said, every time they try to bring this to a title company or an attorney, the response was, oh, yeah, we got it. And then a month later, it was like, there's an issue, there's a problem. And he said it kept happening over and over. So he was skeptical when he talked to me, and he was like, are you really going to solve it? And I was like, I think we got it. I think we figured it out. So going back, we had to figure out what's the problem. Well, you had deaths that were super old, Carlos. You had one guy that was on title as like 50%. He died in 1958. We couldn't even find his death certificate. So we had to ask a investigator to help find it, and he barely found it. He found it, but 50% was somebody from 1958. And there was another one from 1973 that was dead, 1993, 2019. So we had an array of issues of family lines and family trees that we had to solve. But the idea was, we started breaking down the first one, the second one, the third one. And when the analysis was all written out, we found out that eventually it just flowed to the 3 heirs of a 50% and these other people that died on the other 50%. And we figured out there was a way to actually get the property done and sold and get what we needed. And we had to do 6 probates. It took 6 months. But when we're saying commercial property, you can imagine what kind of spread the investor got on that deal. And It was all the pieces in place to solve the puzzle. The investigator, the title company, making sure title insurance got what they needed, talking to the heir and asking the story, right? A lot of wholesalers or investors, they want to just say, okay, how do we do this? How do we get it done? But instead, what you want to do is try to ask questions and find out the story as much as you can, right? Like, you're not ever going to get the full story, but find out the full story. When we talk to them, we got a big picture. We drew a tree. Man, 6 probates, 6 months. I mean, on a deal that nobody was going to be able to solve off, and they salvaged it from a tax deed sale. It's a wild story. But those are the kinds of things I come across. We had one also where, what's unique about my analysis with this stuff is, let's just say it's about to hit a tax deed sale in a week. And when in Florida, it's up for auction, the only way that property comes off the auction block is if the back taxes get paid. There's not like a motion you can do like in foreclosure. So the only way it comes off is you pay back the taxes. Well, do you want to sink your money into a deal and pay off those taxes? Yeah, you don't, right? You don't want to pay off those taxes, especially if it's 10 grand and they're like, oh yeah, we're staying in the house. Like, it's like, all right, well, what's the story, right? If we can figure out the story of somebody owned that property and they died, and let's just say there's 4 kids, and we know that's everybody, and you're able to structure a deal with them before the auction block, well, great. You can do your whole deal. You get them under contract. Now you can pay off the taxes feeling comfortable that the probate's going to be solvable. You pay off the taxes. We figure out the probate. You eventually get the deal done. So it's being able to do an analysis before a deal that you really want is able to, is lost. It goes to an auction, is lost. We see things with foreclosures. We see things even with minors. Crazy stuff. You'll have to tune into one of my presentations that I do. I don't know if I'll do it at one of the RIAs or groups that I'm at, but we see from time to times where there's a minor involved. How do you solve those deals with minors? And there's certain rules in Florida and limitations to be able to get around rules of guardianship. And so we think creatively on deals. We had one where there were 4 minors and it was a $30,000 deal. We were able to figure out that the moms were able to sign on behalf of them without some massive court thing getting involved. So we just saved everybody years. We saved everybody years and time by being able to be creative and think through those transactions. So, I'm going through so many different things in my PowerPoint that were stories, but ones with 7 heirs. You know how many investors would pass off 7 heir situation? And it's the numbers, Carlos. It's 7, it's 10. It's all these numbers that get in the way, and it doesn't have to be that complicated.
Mm-hmm. I love that, man. You guys need somebody creative like this on your deals, negotiating even before something might go to foreclosure. Like I absolutely love it.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen, I'm thinking through another deal that we had, but we saw ones where thinking ahead, right? This is where it comes into play. So we had one in I think it was one in Miami. Lady owned the property. When she died, she had 7 kids ever. And when I say ever, that's important, because those are those little details that matter for wholesalers, investors on questions, not surviving, how many ever. Mm-hmm. And so on this one, we found out there were 7, 2 of them died before mom. And there were 5 grandchildren on that line. No big deal there. The real issue was one of the children was in prison and then the other was incompetent. So like I said in the beginning of the podcast, one of the unique abilities that I've been able to have with this problem solving is not just doing the probate. It's seeing the whole thing all the way till closing, because we could be spending an enormous amount of time trying to do the probate, and then we all of a sudden can't close the deal because title insurance is not happy with something. So on this one, I said, okay, if you're incompetent or you're in prison, my first thing is, where are the power of attorneys?
Mhm.
And I had a deal before this one where I learned title insurance wants the original. They want to make sure that if somebody signs on behalf of somebody else, that it complies with title. And it's got to allow for a probate, because whoever's signing on behalf of that incompetent person or the one in prison has to be able to have the authority to sign for the probate documents. So knowing all of that, I said, get it to the title company. I want to see it too. It allowed for a probate, and title insurance in like a day said, done, approved. And because of that thinking, we moved so quickly, got the probate done in 8 days. Everybody signed the probate documents. Everybody was on board, signed at the closing. I think the closing took like 2 to 3 months, but it got done because those POAs were good. Had those POAs not been good, we wouldn't be talking about that story. And it's the thinking, it's the when we go through these problems, it's absorbing and understanding what was done to apply it to the next situation, even if it had a variation to it. How do you apply it and use critical thinking on those scenarios to solve the next problem?
Mhm. I'm thinking of like a game of chess, except all your moving pieces are, title company, POAs, family members, everything that's going on, investigators, if you need like the first example. Very creative. I love this breakdown here.
Yeah, I mean, you even have deals, even not in the probate world. And I had a presentation recently. The title of it was like, "Why Probate is the Best Real Estate Niche Ever,"
Mhm.
and I had to think about the why a lot for that presentation. And I realized why. It's because it also opens up the doors to some of these other issues that come up on title, like the legal descriptions incorrect. Now the title company saying, hey, you got to do a quiet title, or you got to find a way to correct the legal description. You got to go see an attorney for that. Or
Mhm.
there's some random recorded deed you got to wipe off. Like, you got to figure out how to solve it. It opens the door to, if you like that probate niche and you like the creative solving, problem solving, then you're also going to say, well, what about this? And what about this? What about when one wants to sell and then the other doesn't want to sell? How do you solve those problems? So it opens up a weird and different world to what are the possibilities with some of these creative tactics.
Mhm. I love it, man. Where's the best place to follow you? Al Nicoletti show, everything like that. If you're in Florida, connect with Al. And like we've said, that's like the main action item. Find somebody close to this level that can be on your team.
I appreciate that, Carlos. Yeah, man. I mean, this is one of the things has been really connecting and explaining it to investors like you, and
Mhm.
high level investors just beginning out, because it may be their first deal. They may run into this for the first time. So, I love it. Thanks for the plug there. Everybody can find me on Instagram, at Attorney Nicoletti, Facebook, YouTube under Al Nicoletti. So one of the big things we were talking about before too, Carlos, is I've been getting more into content, more and
Mhm.
more into, like, different types of educational, informational. So the audience can go check out the YouTube channel, and I'm starting to do more Instagram reels and all of those fun things, but on the golf course, behind at the beach, doing all these educational things, that little things you can pick up along the way. So check it out there. And you can, of course, find me on the website, www.alnicoletti.com. And I have my phone number, my email address. I mean, once you start clicking on me on Facebook, you're just not going to get me off the feed. I'll say that.
Love it, man. We got to 100% get on the golf course together. Um,
Yeah.
Last quick question for you before I let you go, Al. What's kind of the general state of the union of real estate in Florida? Just because it's such an interesting time, and you know the stat better than me, but I think it's like 850 people are moving there per day. What's kind of the general? And I mean, like probate, there has to be a lot of people on their way out, so to say. So I'm curious, just your general opinion, since that's like your niche, is that state in Florida.
So two things I'm noticing. One, yeah, there's a lot of people moving here in certain markets that were not on fire like 5 years ago, or just blowing up. So I'm in Jacksonville, and Jacksonville's real estate market is just going through the roof. Like inventory is super low, prices are going really high. People are overpaying, 50 to 60,000 over asking price. So the markets in certain areas that never used to be so hot are becoming hot, like the Sarasota markets, the Tampa markets. They're becoming hotter. But on a probate level, what I realized is I had stats, and I still do on my PowerPoint. I had stats pre-pandemic that were, I can't remember if they were from like Zillow or from some other data company on the baby boomer trend in Florida, Arizona, all the other states. On the slide, it shows basically a third of the inventory by 2037 is going to be like a third baby boomer owned in Florida. I think it was top 5 was Tampa, that area, Miami, that area, Orlando was like 4, Arizona was like 3. That was like crazy too. I was like, wow, Arizona's like got a strong baby boomer population. But what I realized is that was pre-pandemic stats. I haven't even seen what post-pandemic stats are for what that percentage is. And Carlos, can you imagine that number ends up being 40 to 45% baby boomer owned, with people having left California and New York coming to Florida? And now as an investor, you're thinking, okay, I never really heard about probate before Al Nicoletti. And now all of a sudden the next 2 deals I've picked up, now I'm seeing probate. Wait until like 2030, 2040, when all of a sudden your deals are just like, there's a probate here, there's a this here, there's that here, crazy messy deal. So again, we're only starting out really right here, 2022. I mean, that bell curve is supposed to go really high pretty soon. So state of the union when it comes to Florida with probate it's just beginning. And that's why we're diving deep and going so hard in it as we are, and really connecting with people like you, Carlos, right? I mean, to really get into it, we can solve the problem. We can really get into it.
Love it, man. Playing chess. Al's playing chess while other probate attorneys are playing checkers. Love that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, this has been a lot of fun. And I'm so happy to provide all this valuable information to your audience, and anything we can do to really help them in those situations. Reach out, let's see what's going on. Always analyze it before you pass it off.
Super valuable, man. Appreciate your time, and definitely looking forward to hanging out in person again soon, man.
Same, man. I can't wait to see you again. It's going to be a blast.
Love it, man.